guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A&T. This is season 4, episode 13. And we're going to start a little bit differently this time and talk about the fights that are going to be playing in the background. We've got the same Flashpoint team, but we've got slightly different gearing as suggested by one of our patrons, Lane, who has been, in the last little while, actually suggesting a lot of different kind of tweets.
Yeah, and he actually suggested this in our Patreon in one of the messages in a post. So his original post was, I did change my YouTube handle to match this, been meaning to do so for a while. Anyways, I have a new gear loadout that I hope you guys could show off. Been having a lot of success with it so far, 41 out of 42 even in defense. So here it is. Batman, Overpowered Pill, Bone Spikes Knife Collection, Aquaman, Fourth World Helmet and Chest and Astral Harness, Deathstroke, Tantu Totem, Master's Death Cart, and Ibistic. And he says, I've noticed AI does better with Ibistic on defense compared to the Adept Knives. Alright, so you can see, we showed the gear loadout on the team, and it's almost exactly like this. In fact, what Lane suggested was very much like the team we'd already planned with the addition of the Master's Death Cart. So maybe I'd like to talk a bit about what we originally planned, comparing it with this loadout, and why we made one minor change compared to what Lane was suggesting.
Yeah.
Alright, so the first thing is, Aquaman, totally classic tank loadout, Fourth World Helmet and Chest and Astral Harness, which is exactly what we like to use. Batman, Overpowered Pill is probably the best single offensive basic damage gear because of both the high crit chance, 50%, which will fill in the rest of what you could max augment yourself at 50%, and slightly decreased basic damage, but still 50% is good. Bone Spikes and Knife Collection, we did not put both of them on it. We swapped one out because both of them are basic damage boosts, which are good, but they both have Heal on Special 1, which is wasted because they don't stack.
Yeah.
So you could stick in something else with an ability, and you got lots of options. I mean, there's Nth Metal Morningstar, which gives you stun on Special 1.
Yeah.
And Custom Rifle, same amount of basic damage boost, but it gives you an unblockable chance, which I like, even though the unblockable chance is relatively low. I think it's like 11%.
Yeah.
Which is not much, but it's still something compared to nothing from the heal. So that's the only change we made. And Deathstroke, Tantu Totem, Master's Death Cart, and Ibistic, we originally planned on Heart of Darkness.
Yeah.
And Ibistic actually works really well. It's got the slight advantage. All right, so they're both equal in terms of 30% Special 2 boost. Ibistic has the advantage that if you decide to do Special 1, it's also got a Special 1 30% boost. A little bit more damage over time. 0 power drain, which balances out. And so the biggest difference is the power generation, which the the Heart of Darkness has 30% and Ibistic has 20%. And you'd think it wouldn't entirely matter because it's most of the time you're going through it fast enough that the amount of power you're generating doesn't matter, and that we're doing it based on 2 gears. But Master's Death Card, I think, does benefit a little bit from that extra 10% boost, but not enough to matter, because the key to me is when you tag in, Master's Death Card needs to give you a second bar. That's it. As long as it hits the second bar, that's all that matters. Ibistic will do that. So you can see like the action is pretty good, because the one thing you got to keep in mind, if you're planning on getting 2 bars right at the beginning, the League of Assassins Knives is not nearly as necessary when you can do so much more Special 2 damage and get it right away. So yeah, I'm not surprised, because if you come in too late with Deathstroke, the computer doesn't always do the right thing, the smart thing, and come in right away to get the Special 1. So when he comes in, he's doing Special 2, you lose the benefit of the League of Assassins Knives, which is the splash damage. In the card position, again, exactly the same, right? So you want to be able to control when you get Aquaman's first invulnerability, and you want to get in the tag-in ability of Deathstroke from his gear to get 2 bars of power. So that means Flashpoint Batman has to be first, and he's convenient if you want to soften somebody up first before you want to do your special to guarantee that you're going to get your power back. And you can see how well this works. Like, I mean, it's wicked fast.
Yeah.
The only difference maybe now that slows us down is that I'm checking the gear more often, just out of curiosity, to plan, to anticipate if somebody's going to be coming in with a bunch of bars of power. Now that there's 3 pieces of gear that will give you power, only one shows it when they're sitting on the bench, which is Ra's al Ghul's, and the other 2 will be a nice surprise if you don't know that they actually have the gear.
Yeah, and you don't want to embarrass yourself when you're when you got footage for video.
Right. So, you know, if you know they're going to come in with a couple bars, then I'm controlling Aquaman's invulnerability. I'm tagging him in because there's a chance he's going to be facing a super or a special 2.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be caught flat-footed. As soon as I know that there's a chance, I'm ready to tag him out. And I think because I'm not so good at video games in general, where it takes a lot of good sort of reaction speed, I have to anticipate and think about what I want to do so that when it happens, I've already played it out. It's like visualizing, right? Like they do that in sports. You visualize what you're going to do. This is not sports, guys. But it's that same kind of thing because I'll end up screwing up if I don't.
Yeah, so there we go. Our next question comes from Alberto Camarillo, who is another Patreon supporter.
Patron.
Yeah, getting some good questions in from them, and we'd like to take the opportunity to answer them because we can. Yeah. And the question is, who would your favorite DC character in the version of him/her be? I personally really like the Reverse Flash, Yobard Thawne, prior to the New 52 comic reboot.
Okay, this is like a spectacular question in so many ways, simply because it touches on something that I was reading not too long ago from Mark Evanier, and it's spelt like it should be pronounced Evanier, Evanier, but he's been really clear that his name is actually pronounced Evanier. He's a comic book writer. He is, in some ways, like a really cool historian too. He knows a lot of people. He helped edit a bunch of stuff. Walt Kelly's Pogo. Like he's just in the know, and he's like a great writer. He's got a really interesting blog, and one of the points that he makes is that the characters are not static. Like there's no one version of them that is sort of irrefutable canon that everybody else has to follow.
Yeah, the only thing that you could argue that would be is like their initial introduction, and sometimes they go so far from it that it's hard to even say they're the same character.
Right. Because the interpretation is based a lot on the writer, a lot on the artist.
Yeah.
I mean, it's until you see if you don't believe that the artist has a huge influence, then you haven't seen the right artist doing it.
Yeah.
So there's lots, and you know what's funny too? There's lots of characters like Swamp Thing, for example, where it was created by somebody, but to me, the perfect version was actually Alan Moore's.
Oh, totally. I mean, my favorite DC character set, might just be Miracle Man, even though it's not DC. It's like the fake DC, right?
It's not. Well, it's like fake. I guess it's fake DC, like Shazam.
Yeah.
But it's called Marvel Man. So, and it's now owned by Marvel. So it's what. It's yeah. I know what you mean.
So it's like fake Marvel, fake DC, like that, but like close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Watchmen was supposed to be loosely based around DC characters, right?
It was. All right, so it was based around characters that they didn't have. He didn't have the clearance to use.
Yeah, but they were DC characters, right?
I think so, because Night Owl was supposed to be Blue Beetle. Dr. Manhattan was supposed to be, was it Captain Atom? And yeah, Rorschach was maybe Batman?
Something. Either way, my favorite DC characters aren't actually DC characters just because I don't read too many comic books and I really like Alan Moore.
Yeah. All right, so maybe that's one of our, I guess, blind spots too. I used to read a lot of comics. I used to go every week, new comic book day on Wednesday. I'd pick up a bunch of stuff, and I think probably in the last 15 years, I've gotten away from that simply because one, space, like it takes so much storage space to keep comics, and you know, if you're obsessive like me and you have to have them bagged and boarded, yeah. But the other part is that they're just getting so expensive. I still remember when comic books were cheap.
Yeah.
And it was almost like throwaway media, and you could follow a bunch of stuff and it wouldn't cost you like an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
Then they got into the really high quality paper, and that came with, you know, better art. It would last longer, acid free stuff, whatever, glossy. The color separations are better, so it was almost like fine art, right?
Yeah.
But it also put the price sort of through the roof, and it became, I mean, it's almost like you had
more
to...
of a collector's thing than it is like a consumer's thing.
So when I talk about my favorite characters and the versions of them, we're going back a little bit. So did you ever see the movie John Constantine?
Did not.
Okay, so Keanu Reeves, I mean, it was an interesting CGI kind of thing. It was visually interesting, but the best version of John Constantine was the original one where Jamie Delano wrote it, John Ridgway drew it, and it was he was like a magician with an attitude. And it was neat because up until then, a lot of it was that kind of serious, pseudo medieval, like that magicians, right? It was sort of a big deal. You brought him into the present, but it wasn't nearly as gritty. I guess it made a lot of sense when I first read it that somebody who had seen so many like horrific, weird, bizarre things would end up as jaded and cynical and as angry as he was. And I thought it was just so cool. Now, I think did Alan Moore ever do Constantine? I know Neil Gaiman did a John Constantine story, but I think to me he'll always be Jamie Delano's. Speaking of Alan Moore, you mentioned this too. Pretty much anything Alan Moore has done is usually the definitive version of that character.
Yeah, like the Killing Joke Joker.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Brian Boland. All right, so Brian Boland, brilliant artist, and that helped the whole project too, right?
Yeah.
That sort of realistic without being photorealistic kind of thing, like where the way Brian Boland draws and inks, there's like texture to it, and it feels like they're like solid. They're not just like flat on the page.
Yeah, there's that one frame of like the Joker holding his face and laughing that's like I can still like almost like picture now. And I've like read the comic once and maybe like seen it like that frame once or twice in a video, but there's that one image that like it's really kind of striking.
Yeah. No, absolutely brilliant. What else? Swamp Thing I mentioned. See, and here's the thing too. I think the reason why Alan Moore is so good and why sometimes his movies don't do nearly as well in the media of movies is because there's something about his writing that's extra special. When you get to read his descriptions and the quality of his prose and how he describes things and how he sees things, I don't think it translates really well into movies. Even though, I mean, did you
talk about like the Watchmen movie?
The Watchmen movie was basically a whole frame by frame recreation of the comic book. So I was thinking more along lines of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
There was also a Killing Joke movie.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, apparently the main issue is that the first 20 minutes are awful and obviously written by somebody completely different and don't include any of the plot of the Killing Joke. And then you get into like half an hour of the Killing Joke or something. So there's like a whole like section where it's padded for runtime.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the actual Killing Joke part of the Killing Joke, they're like, oh, well, this is pretty good because, it was written by Alan Moore and they're mostly just doing that. Yeah. But the beginning is really, really kind of like awkward and not good and like edgy for the sake of being edgy, like the this is a higher rating so we're gonna put swears in it kind of.
And sometimes I guess that inconsistent tone in anything throws me off because like I was saying maybe last week, that Alter Carbon, there were so many things I really, really liked about it. I liked Takeshi Kovacs' original skin. I liked visually, like it was pretty spectacular, and that scene in the hotel at the beginning, won't spoil it for you, but it was really cool. And it's just, and I know that I was looking at some reviews, and I know people had different issues with it, and they actually liked it better as it went on. But it was that last little bit where they're having, those the almost required kind of confrontation scene at the end.
Yeah. And
they get into their speeches and stuff. I thought,
like the anime style like fight scene where they're like talking for like 5 minutes in between like charging off attacks.
So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed, mainly because it had started off so strongly.
Yeah.
As an example of a character another example of a character whose original version wasn't the best, Animal Man. Now, I'm pretty sure you haven't read that.
But, I'm 100% sure I have not read that.
So Grant Morrison did a reboot of Animal Man. I think he was like a comic book character from a different company even that DC ended up with the rights to. Yeah. And his run of Animal Man was like just so interesting and thoughtful. Oh, what else he did? Grant Morrison's an interesting guy because he also did a reboot. It wasn't even a reboot because it was in the middle of the series. He took over for Doom Patrol and he took it in a totally wild, different direction, and it was so much fun. And I'm dating myself because I believe those were in the 90s. But absolutely, totally brilliant. So I think if it was going to be my favorite character, I think it would be John Constantine, the Jamie Delano version, the one with the smoker who had the lung cancer and ended up. I want to remember that he used magic to cast it out, or that he couldn't. Like there's something pivotal to the plot, but I'm not so good at remembering details. But I remember how I feel when I read stuff.
Yeah,
and it was really good.
Okay, so there we go. That was a lot, but those are just media that we like. Some of it DC, some of it not.
Yes.
The next question comes from Korey Ashcraft, and they say, Hey BDCKR, I know this might be a bit of a personal question for you guys, but what do you guys think you'll do with your lives in the near future regarding schooling or career building? You don't have to answer, of course, but I'm just curious. Love the constant injustice videos, by the way.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're glad you love them because we really enjoy making them. So it's an interesting question because we've avoided not necessarily talking specifically about ourselves, but giving any identifying details.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think I should point out is I actually have a career already.
Yeah.
That I don't think I'll ever give up for YouTubing. But
or anything until you retire, probably.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that'll be sooner than I expect. But as far as the near term, we're probably going to be taking a small hiatus this summer because we're going to be away for a week or two.
Yeah.
We'll let you guys know well ahead of time if we can, so that you can you won't be disappointed and feel like we're skipping out on you.
Yeah, and we might try to end up doing something like last time. It depends where we ended up having like supplemental content, and we actually had different stuff, but we had no less volume of content, where I know it wasn't as interesting to our core audience, but at least there was something or interesting to our kind of like primary audience. But there were some people who were still kind of watching and following along, and there were just stuff from us, so that there's not like nothing.
So I'll mention a little bit about my job right now, just because it has an impact on what I want to talk about. So at my job, I do a lot of typing. Recently at work, they changed.
I think that's at a lot of jobs.
Okay,
I don't think that narrows it down too much.
That's true. We have these little. They replaced the big tower or the mid-sized towers that we had with these little mini things that I think, solid state drive. They're meant to be really small but functional.
Yeah.
I believe a lot of it is like a laptop innards, right? And they connected a keyboard. Only they gave us chiclet keyboards that are awful. And in the last month or so, it's been driving me nuts typing on that. So I finally got a mechanical keyboard, low end.
Yeah, and the reason, real quick, the reason you got one is because I got one very recently, secondhand from a friend.
Yeah.
With very light use. It's a Logitech G710, and I have instantly fallen in love with it.
Yeah. And
just love typing on it. Here you can hear just some of that sweet clicking noises. It's got like, I knew nothing about mechanical keyboards at all, but now I'm like, it's like got like cherry MX blue switches and
So I went with a cheap one. So mine was ASIO, and it was just on sale for like $60 Canadian. And it is amazing. So they're linear. These ones don't have any sort of click or anything, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they click right at the end.
Constant actuation force. That's called bottoming out. I know all the terms now because I had to look it up to see if it was good or not.
Yeah, it's such a difference. So compared to chiclet, it is amazing. And compared to even the regular membrane keyboard, the membrane keyboard now feels mushy. Like it feels like, to me it's like when you're running through mud, or whether you're just running on like nice, clean, solid ground.
Yeah, I got my mechanical keyboard all cleaned and set up because I cleaned it after my friend because it had like some real like water stains and stuff, just like some dust in it. And then almost right away after that, I had to go somewhere where I had my laptop with my laptop keyboard, and I actually felt sad because I'd used the mechanical keyboard enough to know that I wanted to use it and not use any other keyboards, and I felt a little sad that I had to be leaving it. So I think the takeaway from both of our stories is that if you currently have a keyboard that you don't love or are in the market for a new one, then a mechanical keyboard actually makes like a world of difference. It feels better. Like I went from not knowing about them at all and not caring about it to being like absolutely in love with it. And I recognize that I wouldn't have got it at full price because the keyboard's like, the one that I have is supposed to be like $160 or something.
He gave it to you for $40, right?
He gave it $30.
$30.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be 160 Canadian approximately on Amazon.
I need friends like that.
Yeah, and I got it for $30 because he's a real tech
gamer?
aficionado. Well, he moved from one mechanical keyboard to another, so he had this one just sitting in his home, moving up in the world.
Right.
And so the takeaway is that if you have the means to spend more on a keyboard and you type a lot, and you think you like the idea of a little bit more of a click, a little bit more of an oomph in your keys, then I would highly recommend a mechanical keyboard.
Yeah. And maybe getting back to your question too, in the near term, I think what we're gonna have to overcome after the summer is that we're gonna have to figure out a different workflow for our videos, because
without talking about it too much, we're not gonna be
physically able to record in the same room as much. And I think it probably won't be too much of a problem as long as we figure out getting a new microphone, which thanks to our patrons, I want to say patrons on Patreon.
Yeah.
We're gonna be able to get another microphone.
Yeah, because I mean, we said initially that the supporters weren't actually contributing to, like, we weren't gonna like reinvest in tech because we had our setup pretty much, and we weren't gonna inherently like use the money to improve our videos.
And we were wrong.
Yeah, well, we weren't planning on it, but now there's actually something that we need to purchase if we want to keep making videos, and by the time we need to purchase it, we'll have probably gotten enough money from Patreon to buy like a Blue Yeti mic. Probably we have a Blue Snowball right now, which is definitely good, and we're either going to get a Blue Snowball or a Blue Yeti.
If you listen to our old videos when we were doing it off the microphone on a camera and then the microphone off your laptop, this is like a world of difference.
Oh, for sure. I use this mic whenever possible. Whenever I can find an excuse to use it, because it just produces such crisp, clean audio.
Right. And
that's been useful to me for other times. Like even when I'm just like talking with friends.
Yeah.
Plugging this mic in makes my audio just way nicer.
Until it's like the keyboards. Until I'd used it, I had no idea it was that much difference.
We would not have bought it if it weren't for the YouTube channel. And now that we have it, it's hard to go to a lower quality of audio, especially when you're like filming anything that you're going to show other people.
Yep.
It's almost required for me. Like, I don't want to film anything native on the camera without doing like ADR and like voiceover.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so the next little bit was originally in response to a bunch of different questions, and it's going to be about how to get your questions answered either here in our Q&A&T video or even in the comments. And I'd originally cut and pasted 7 different questions and comments from the same viewer, which eventually ended up with a complaint from them that we weren't answering their questions.
Yeah, but we figured it was unnecessary to call them out in specific and just use that as a way to talk about,
because we don't need it. I mean, we can talk about it in general, so I thought, we can get away from that. So a lot of times the best way is really to ask an interesting question in the comments. We don't always see all of them,
or ask an unanswered question more than interesting, maybe.
Well, I guess it depends. It's a combination of stuff, right? Like, if something tickles my fancy, I'm happy to pull it, and it gives me a starting point for other stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of times why we don't answer questions is because, one, we don't see it. Because sometimes there's just a lot of questions, and there's a whole sort of a big mess of them that we don't always get a chance to read everything before another one's pushed it out of the way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because people ask something that was already answered and addressed in the video.
Or in the description.
Or both.
Yeah, or in another comment in the same video.
Right. If a question isn't clear, sometimes we have the patience to ask for clarification. Sometimes we don't. And sometimes when we ask for clarification and we don't get a response, well, that's sort of the answer, right? Oh, and you mentioned too, right? Someone just answered the question already. And
even if it's us in a separate comment.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of times, like, the other viewers are really helpful. And maybe, I guess what I could do is maybe just like the ones that do a good job of answering the questions. I should probably encourage that more.
Yeah. We really do get a lot of viewers that obviously have a lot of love for the game. Yeah. And have a lot of also technical knowledge and like general knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And probably the biggest is too, because we can see people who ask a lot of questions. Like, we'll remember people, right? It's not like everybody's a big mass. And if we answer a question, and I don't need somebody to thank me, like, that's not necessary. But if they at least acknowledge that they saw the answer, then I'm more likely to answer the next time, and that makes a difference. So yeah, that's it. Oh, and
our timing is pretty good.
Yeah. So thanks again to those who continue to support us on our Patreon. Alberto Jr. Camarillo, Lane, Laszlo, and most recently, iProfit.
Yeah, we got a brand new supporter. It's cool to see people still trickling in. I don't know why. I kind of assumed that where we were at was where we were going to be at.
Yeah.
And I was also happy enough where we were already at. So it's always a nice bonus to see other people willing to help us out. So there we go. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.